Ooh, the books for this countdown this week are phenomenal. Let's get to it. Hi everyone, I'm Sandy and welcome back to my channel. Today I have 1001 book countdown for you. If you're not familiar with the 1001 book countdown, I will leave a card up here for you where you can go and check out the original video. But basically I'm reading books off of the 1001 books you must read before you die list, and I combined all editions of that book together, which actually gave me 1315 books to read. I just started my channel out here when I got closer to the 1001 number because I had a nice sound to it, plus it's the title of the book. So I have been working on this for years, quite literally years, but over the last almost 3 years now, I've been documenting it out here on YouTube, and I am approaching 200 books read since starting my channel. I'm flabbergasted and so incredibly thrilled. So hopefully you consider giving me a subscribe and sticking around and seeing how long it takes me to get farther down on that number. But I'm so happy with the progress so far. I have found some amazing books off of this list, and I have found some horrible books off of this list. But this week, two amazing books. I can't wait to talk about them. But what we will go ahead and do first is put up the numbers, which are, I have to look, again, 819, which is my main number, and 42. So every year at the beginning of the year, I pre-select 52 books with the idea of trying to get that number down to 0. This year it was all the books I physically owned. I have not made it to 0 any of the years I've been trying this, but I have hope for this year because I am still officially on track as of right now. Fingers crossed that trend continues, but that's what the bottom number represents. All right, so the first phenomenal book that I'm going to talk about today is actually this one, Daniel Deronda by George Eliot. This book was originally published in 1876. George Eliot has 5 books on the 1001 countdown. I have read now 4 of them, so that's pretty incredible. She only wrote 7 books. If you're not familiar, George Eliot is a pen name for Mary Ann Evans. And so she wrote 7 books and then a bunch of short stories and poetry and other things out there, but only 7 full-length novels. I have to say that this one may be one of my favorites now. Is it my favorite or one of my favorites? Daniel Deronda. This book. Okay, I'm going to pull myself together and talk about this book. This book starts off not with necessarily Daniel Deronda. It starts off with a character whose name is Gwendolyn, and her and Daniel meet right at the very beginning, and then you go back in time and you really get all of Gwendolyn's backstory. Gwendolyn is an entitled, spoiled woman, or at the time of the story, she's very, very young, but we go through her whole childhood and see why she's that way, why she feels like so much should be kind of handed to her. And you get all of her backstory, and then you finally get back to Daniel Deronda. So at the beginning of this book, I felt like it could have been called Gwendolyn because Gwendolyn was such a big picture of this book for so long of it. And her character development, I do have to say, in this is exceptional. So we start off with this entitled, spoiled young girl growing into a woman, having to make difficult choices, not necessarily making all the good choices. And then in the end, how she develops in the very end of the book is really very well done. George Eliot never disappoints with her writing. There were so many beautiful passages in this. The one thing is, I felt like sometimes that this was almost 2 books. It was the story of Gwendolyn and Daniel Deronda, and then Daniel Deronda and his heritage and his family and, some other of his friends, things like that. And the 2 of those really kind of were side by side, but not necessarily intertwined that much. And so they did feel a little bit separated. I really loved, though, Gwendolyn's whole storyline. There is an instance in chapter 31 in this book that's just like shocking. It's just like slapping someone upside the head. It was just so incredibly well done. I was gasping out loud as I was reading it because I was just like, oh, someone told her. It was just incredibly well done. I ended up giving this book around a 4.5 star rating. And largely that was because I felt like the 2 stories being disconnected, the little bit of fuzziness in the beginning, and then also Daniel's story wasn't as compelling for me. I loved Gwendolyn. I love when he was interacting with Gwendolyn. I loved Gwendolyn and all of what she went through. But Daniel's part of it, it was just kind of like I said, it felt like a separate book. and I wanted it to be a little bit more cohesive, a little bit more intertwined. But George Eliot remains a favorite. Like I said, it may be my favorite George Eliot now. It might be. I'm going to have to really, really think about that. But so well done. Highly recommend. I read this for March of the Mammoths with Tiffany over at Beautiful Minutia. It is 800-page book. So it's a brick. It's an investment to read this particular book, but I think it's very well done. I can't wait to read. I have Mill on the Floss that I'm going to read later this year. One of the books that's not on this is Romola, which I believe is one of Britta Bowler's favorite books. So or her favorite George Eliot, if I remember correctly. I could be stating that incorrectly. So I do want to read that one, even though it's not on the 1001 list. But with this book, we do get to go from 819 to 818. And it was, of course, on my 2024 list. So that number gets to go from 42 down to 41. Very successful, highly rated, 4-star, 4.5, could arguably be a 5-star read of a book. So definitely recommend. All right, the last book that I have for you is the 1001 Book Club pick. I actually just finished reading this morning. So yeah, you're getting a fresh take. It is making it somewhat hard for me to talk about it in a coherent way, so I apologize for that. But the book that we read for the 1001 Book Club for the month of March was The Well of Loneliness by Radclyffe Hall. This book was originally published in 1928, which is pretty amazing considering what the book is actually about. It got a lot of opposition once it was out. It was seen as obscene, because it does feature a lesbian couple throughout much of the book. And so very groundbreaking, I'm sure, for the time, and very controversial for the time. The book, though, starts with a married couple. Wife is pregnant. They're referring to the baby as Stephen all throughout the pregnancy. And then out comes little Stephen, and Stephen is a girl. And they decide to name her Stephen. So her name is Stephen Gordon. And we get to grow up with Stephen all throughout her childhood, where she's just seen as different. She wants to do things like gymnastics and horse riding and hunting. She doesn't want to be playing out with the other girls. She wants to do the things that the boys are traditionally doing. And her father, who is so incredibly loving and supportive, tries to help her accomplish those different things. He also really wants her to focus on her schooling, wants her to be smart, wants her to learn how to speak French, wants her to learn how to speak different languages and be something more. And I think her father was doing that in order to try and help her with what he already kind of knew her to be at that time. There are some very heartbreaking scenes in this when she's young, especially. She asks her father what is wrong with her, and her father says nothing. But for her at the time, she knew she was different, and she didn't know how. And her father, rather than addressing it, kind of brushed it under the carpet a little bit, and not a little bit, did brush it under the carpet. And she finds out later how much her father actually knew. And she says in the book, it would have helped her so much had she known how her father felt at that particular point in time. Oh, it's just, and then as she gets older, you get her first friendships, her first true friendships, her first love, her first betrayal. I mean, and it is heart-wrenching, some of the stuff that happens to her at a young age. And how those events influenced her throughout her entire life. And it also talks a lot about acceptance, accepting yourself, trying to figure out who you are, and the fear that comes along with this decision, and the fear that comes along with who she is. She doesn't feel like she can be free. She doesn't feel like she can tell people who she really is. And it was so tough. And then when she finally starts to meet some people who she thinks will accept her, it's just another potential betrayal. It's another thing that knocks her down. It isn't until she goes and works during the war as an ambulance driver, that's when she starts to kind of meet another love interest, and their life together is a lot of what is in the second half of this book. But she still suffers from a lack of acceptance, a judgment of others. She is a writer, and is struggling to write and to produce works, at the same time having judgment of other people in her life and of their life. And it's heart-wrenching. I mean, she has a couple of people that are solidly in her corner, and one of them has one of my favorite names ever. It's a shortened name, but it's so good. I really liked her name in it. I'm not going to say what it is because if you read it, it's a fun thing to experience. The one thing I will say is that the ending of this book is so tough. I just wanted something more for her. It's very difficult read. I think that there's a lot in this book that could be pulled out of today, right? There's a lot of things that I think people still struggle with in this particular space. And I thought this book was so well done, though. I ended up giving it 5 stars because once I actually picked it up and started reading it, I couldn't put it down. I wanted to keep reading. I wanted to keep finding out what would happen. And I knew it was going to break my heart from about a certain point on. And yeah, it certainly did that. With this book, I do get to go from 818 to 817, and it was on my 2024 list. So I get to go from 41 down to 40. I'm still right on track. Unbelievable that I don't have any books going now. I don't have anything on the fly. I have one more book that I wanted to read in March, which was Out of Africa. I don't know yet if I'm going to read that one now or if I'm going to wait. I have a couple of the ones on my March TBR that are kind of calling to me already that I almost want to pick up instead. So I'll see how it goes. But like I said, it's been a much more successful month this month. I have loved the books that I have read. This is the 4th book that was over a 3-star. I had a 4.5 star if you consider Daniel Deronda, and then this one, which I thought was a solid 5-star for me. Absolutely incredible. Lovely, lovely reading month for the 1001 list. This is part of why I love this project. So, but as always, like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, everyone, thanks. Bye.